From beautiful downtown Millheim, in the smack dab center of the Keystone State, this is Lou Bryson with Seen Through a Glass, the podcast that's mostly about food and drink in central Pennsylvania. Welcome to episode 42, the annual cider episode, I guess. 2 weeks ago, I promised you a cider episode. I did a cider episode in May of last year, so it's kind of becoming an annual thing, which I'm fine with continuing. I'd still like to do a cider pressing episode in the fall, and if there are any orchards out there listening and are interested, please get in touch and we'll set that up. But like I said, I promised you a cider episode. It's just not going to be the cider episode I expected. See, I had a recording of a presentation I did back in April with Dan Pucci, the author of American Cider, at the Ploughman Farm Cider taproom in Gettysburg. We talked about rye whiskey and cider, and the folks at the taproom recorded it and edited it, and I was good to go with an episode. Easy peasy. And I figured that gave me more time to work on the episode after that. And then I went to the PA Cider Fest 2 weeks ago, and everything changed. I learned a lot, and I talked to some great people about cider, and I got a good handful of short interviews with cider makers. That's now what you're going to hear. I'm going to drop the discussion with Dan next week as a bonus episode, so you'll get to hear it then. Now, what did I learn? Well, usually this would be where I'd lay some groundwork for the episode, tell you some of the stuff that you were about to hear in the interview, and fill in the gaps that I saw after listening to the interviews. But this time, we're going to do things differently. I'm going to roll those short interviews with a bit of interstitial expansion on each of them. And then we'll get an overview from Ploughman's Ben Wenk, the same guy I interviewed last year, and the guy who gave me the VIP pass to the Cider Fest and the cider maker's dinner the night before, and put me up in a nice hotel in Gettysburg in between. Just a bit of disclosure there, as I told you I would when needed. And what else in the episode? Well, as our house renovation nears completion, we finally got a concrete pad poured by the back porch for me to set up my grill, and I got to use that for the first time in over a year last night. I'll tell you how that went. But before we do anything else, of course, here's what I'm drinking today. What I'm drinking today is one of the whiskeys from Heaven Hill's new Grain to Glass series, the straight bourbon whiskey at 107 proof and about 7 years old, with a stated mash bill of 52% corn, 35% rye, and 13% malt. Why am I tasting this whiskey? Well, I just got it in the mail. It's good to do these things fresh. Second, my good friend Bernie Lubbers, Heaven Hill's American Whiskey brand ambassador, just celebrated his birthday last week. Happy birthday, brother. And finally, another friend, Sydney Jones, just started a job with Heaven Hill recently. So I've kind of had Heaven Hill on the brain. This new Grain to Glass line features grain that is grown from seed chosen by Beck's Hybrids, a family-owned Indiana business. The farm is Peterson Farms, another family business, and one of their farms is the one right across the road from Heaven Hill's Bardstown home. That's pretty damned local. But that's all good, but it doesn't mean much if the whiskey isn't delicious. Let's have a snort. Before I even get started, I just want to say 107 is one of my favorite proofs. I love whiskeys at this proof. I don't know why. I haven't had many that are really nasty strong at that proof, really hot and heavy. I just like this proof. And I got to say, wow, nice aroma, sweet corn, hard candies. Yes, I hate to say this about a Heaven Hill whiskey. Sorry, Parker, but a little bit of leather. And a weirdly sweet, dusty note. Some nice spices, baking spices. Ooh. And some of that rye. Very nice. All right, let's try it. Yeah, that's good. This is a whiskey that is well put together. There's nothing sticking out anywhere. And again, that 107 is just right here. Warm, but not hot. Really spreads the flavor through the mouth. And the finish has heft to it. You're tasting oak the whole way through, but as the whiskey comes to a close in your mouth, there's I don't want to say heaviness, there's a fullness here. And the oak is like a framework that supports it and keeps it from lumping on your tongue and in your back palate. The spices are still there, keeping things lively. The corn is there, keeping it sweet. Wow, that's pretty good. That's really pretty good. This is the Heaven Hill Grain to Glass. This is one of three. This is the Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. There's also a Kentucky Rye and a Kentucky Wheated Bourbon. Keep an eye out for them. These are good. And that means that it's time for Smack Dab in the Center, sponsored by the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. Now, I am not an angler or a fly fisherman, but I do thrill to the sight of one working the water. I've seen fly fishers in the River Spey in Scotland. I've seen them in the Snake River in Idaho. And I've certainly seen them working the streams that are some of the best fly fishing in Eastern America, right here in Center County. You know, it's summer, I realize, and the spring hatches may be over and the steelhead long gone, but trout are active in Spring Creek Canyon, from Belfont to the aptly named Fisherman's Paradise. The streams are no longer icy cold, and you can leave the waders behind as you stride into Spruce Creek and Fishing Creek. And if you fish the waters of Penns Creek, my friends, you may see some of Milheim's finest, maybe even me, sitting right in the creek, toasting your sport with a cold glass of local beverage. Fly fishing opportunities in Center County are year-round, thanks to the bountiful springs that feed our streams. Tie your flies, flex your rod, and try your luck. The PA Cider Fest was in Biglerville, about 15 minutes outside of Gettysburg, right in the heart of Adams County apple country at the South Mountain Fairgrounds. Ben Wank had invited me to attend the cider makers' dinner the night before the fest, right there on the fairgrounds. It's a really informal get-together, buffet-style food with an emphasis on apples. The apple braised ribs were delicious. And there's cans and bottles of cider just racked in tubs of ice. It's been a thing for the cider makers themselves. The night before the fest, just relax, taste each other's ciders. This year, they decided to sell a small amount of tickets to the public. Well, you got to get in on this. I met three of the public attendees, three guys named Skylar, Alex, and Mikey, and they were totally jazzed to be there. They were also way, way into cider, like a beer geek in 2002 was into beer. The next day, I'd watch these guys drop hundreds of dollars on take-home bottles of the ciders they liked the best. I was also happy to see some friends. Meredith Rebar was running the show with her company, Homebrewed Events, and my buddy, John D'Alessandro, was working for her. And an old Philly beer scene friend, Stephen Lyford, was her photographer. He had some great shots. So I started sampling ciders from places like Arsenal in Pittsburgh, and Punks from Punxsutawney, and Bucktail in Marshall's Creek up in the Poconos. And they were good, or super intriguing, like the celery ciders Arsenal brought. But when Ben caught up with me and asked me what I thought, I had to tell him that I'd had some good ciders, but I was still looking for a really delicious cider. He grinned and steered me over to the corner, and that's where I met Aaron Rush from Inner Stoic in Oregon Hill, Pennsylvania. We talked about his ciders, and he poured me a sample of a single tree crabapple cider from a single tree outside of Coudersport in Potter County. It was, well, delicious, tart, complex, just a tiny bit funky, and utterly captivating. My faith was restored, and that's when things started to click for me. The next day, Ben let me in the fest area an hour before things started so I could talk to people. I got an interview with Aaron Rush. Let's do that now. All of these interviews were done with my handheld recorder right out in the open air, so there's a varying amount of background noise. I did what I could. Hey, I'm with Aaron Rush of Inner Stoic Wine and Cider Company in Oregon Hill, Pennsylvania. You're up, north of Wellsboro?
We are. We're, just south of Wellsboro, about 20 minutes south in the little community of Oregon Hill.
Okay, all right. We're at the PA Cider Fest. I had some of your stuff last night. You remember, I was pretty impressed. Yeah. I kind of hung around for a while.
Yeah.
There was one in particular that just really stood out, the crab apple. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we had a gentleman approach us and said he had this single gnarly crab apple tree up on his property in Potter County, near the town of Coudersport, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
And so I told him I'd come check it out, and sure enough, it was just a gnarly little thing, and we had no idea, if we could use it or not. But I said, hey, let's pick it, see what happens. So just by luck, it happened to press out to about 30 gallons of juice.
Okay.
And so
that sounds like a lot from crab apples.
It is, and it was a big tree.
Okay.
And they pressed out really well, surprisingly. So we just decided to make it as a pet nat, meaning we were fermenting it, and right before the end of fermentation, we bottled it up and called it good. And
yes, you
did.
a
few months later, you try to figure out what you have, and luckily it came out really, really nice. So yeah, no intervention, just it was a good way to highlight what that specific part of the state can produce. As far as the apples go.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the best ciders I had last night.
Thank you.
Yeah. For the listeners, and somewhat for me, because I still don't have a great answer on this. Difference between a crab apple and an apple.
Well, the crab apples that we're talking about are just kind of wild, just uncultivated, gnarly trees. So a lot of them we can't even identify.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So these specific ones we made that cider out. They looked somewhat like a Hughes crab. Again, there would have to be somebody above my pay grade to identify them.
Please.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we that's kind of the fun of it. We don't necessarily put IDs to them, but we just ferment them and see what happens.
And then I had another one you did. I think you said it was Gold Rush on Cab Franc skins?
Correct, yeah. So being in close proximity to the Finger Lakes, we have a lot of really nice working relationships with different wineries up there. So for this particular cider, we fermented Gold Rush apples with John Gold cider.
Okay.
And then we pumped that onto pressed off Cabernet Franc grape skins. So we let that ferment together for about, I guess it was 10 to 12 days, something like that. And then
picked up a really nice color too.
Correct, yeah. And it was the first year we did it, so it was a little bit of an experiment. Then,
do that more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but that's the fun of it. We're doing small batch stuff. We can experiment.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I gained a little bit of inspiration because the year prior, Eve's Cidery up in the Finger Lakes had done one similar to that.
Okay.
So I thought, let's give it a shot ourselves.
Cool.
And yeah, I thought it turned out really nice. It's a nice rosé style.
Yeah.
Just a good summer supper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything you do is in 750s?
Everything we do is in 750s.
Okay.
Correct. We used to do some 500s, but yeah, the 750s, we just kind of started running with that format from the get-go. And
it works for wine, right?
It does, yeah. And our company, we do a 50-50 portfolio of cider and wine.
Okay.
So, we're used to that format. We're used to marketing in the 750s. It works well.
Speaking of marketing, where can people find your ciders?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's
not the easy part.
Yeah, it's not the easy part.
Can we go there?
Yeah, for sure. We can.
Okay.
You can go right to the winery. You can do tastings by appointment at our cidery there in Oregon Hill. We do have a satellite location in the town of Wellsboro.
Okay.
We're partnered with. It's called Hillstone Farms. They're like a farmer's market right on Main Street. And we have our only satellite location in that market. So bottles are always available there.
I got to say, Pennsylvania does not have great liquor laws, but that is
Correct.
one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we did just file to partner with Vino Shipper. So we will start to ship here in the near future.
All right.
So, yeah.
Aaron, thank you. Beautiful day. I wish you a lot of luck today.
It's going to be a great day.
Yeah.
It's great meeting you.
Yeah, take care.
Take care.
I also talked to the guys at Bucktail. They haven't even been open 2 years yet. They're making some good cider. We talked about what their ciders were and how they got off to such a quick start. Hey, I'm at the Bucktail Cider Company table at the PA Cider Fest with Paul Tafani.
You got it.
And John Kulig.
Yeah,
okay. Go. And where are you guys?
We're in Marshalls Creek, Pennsylvania, just touched northeast Stroudsburg.
Okay. And fairly new to this?
We are about 1.5 years old, and we're fresh to making cider, but we really just developed a passion for it in the last few years. I mean, John and I dove head in. He's the brains of the operation and the chemist behind it. And
wow, that's a bold statement.
I just taste it and be like, I don't know, John. What do you think?
No, it's a partnership. We both do it together. It's been a lot of fun.
How'd you come to cider?
Well, I worked for the railroad 13 years, 12-hour overnight shifts. I'm tired of it. So,
wow, okay.
As much as I love being a locomotive engineer, cider was my future. I always loved agriculture, so I was like, well, you can't make money in apples, but you can sure make it in alcohol.
There you go.
So I visited some local cideries, fell completely in love with cider, And then my brother was mentioning that John also had an interest in he was doing micro brewing and.
Well, I was more into the beer industry, and I had friends that we brewed beer, and I traveled everywhere just to go to microbreweries. And then I do enjoy wine with my wife. She's like, let's go to some wineries. And so I do enjoy wine. And Paul's like, here, try some cider. I was like, oh, really, cider? It's too sweet. And I tried some of his that he made with his brother, and I fell in love with it and dove right in. I took classes at the Cider Institute of North America. Okay. So I enjoyed the science behind it, the yeast and everything, and all the esters formation and all that. So I'm a chemist by trade. So all this is like really cool to me. So
compounds and things.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I said, I just taste it. I'm like, the tannins taste good to me.
Dude, I'm with you. I'm a history major. I don't understand this stuff. I just talk about it.
BA in history.
Yeah.
State University.
There you go.
Completely useless.
Yes. No. Got me here.
As you too.
Yeah. I won't say no.
So what did I have last night?
So last night
Imperial.
you had Imperial Stag, which is an 8% dessert cider blend. So we took a traditional made ice cider and then blended it with our dry.
Okay.
So we know that ice cider is a really great sipping drink. We wanted to have something you could have a little more of without getting a little too crazy. So we blended them together, and it really came out so beautifully balanced with just a little bit of oakiness in the back. It's got just a perfect level of malic acid. The sweetness is only 1,008, so it's like just a great, well-balanced taste.
Yeah.
And then there was also Rush Hour, which is a Gold Rush single varietal, no additions, nothing. It was just pressed South Mountain, Pennsylvania apples, and that's what we got. And it just came out absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Looking forward to trying some more. Where can people get your cider?
So we are a tiniest of the tiny. We are
Okay.
only available at Pocono Beer on Route 209 in Marshalls Creek, and Shawnee Craft Brewing also.
Oh, I know
Shawnee
that
on
place.
Delaware.
Yeah.
And then you can also pick up from our farm location, Bucktail Farm, and
Order online.
Yeah,
Yep.
order online.
Oh,
as
okay.
well.
All right.
Shipped to most of the states, unless you're one of the tough
Jersey.
ones to ship to.
Well, that's lucky because usually Pennsylvania is one of the tough ones.
Well, that's why we're here. Start in the hard place and work outward.
Right. All right, guys. Thanks very much. Have a good fest.
Yeah,
you
thanks
too.
a lot,
Thank
Lou.
you.
All right. Take
See ya.
care. I had tried some Punk Cider Perry the night before. Perry is pear cider. It's cool that it has its own name. I was kind of disappointed to learn that cider made from quinces is just called that, quince cider. Doesn't get its own word. Anyway, I talked to Andrew from Punks and learned that their cider was on at the Toasted Monkey in Hyde, which had been such a pleasant surprise in the Phillipsburg Clearfield episode. Yay, Toasted Monkey! Here's what else he had to say. Hey, I'm at the PA Cider Fest with Andrew Divelbiss. There we go, of Punk Cider Works in Punxsutawney.
Yeah.
And you guys are fairly new, is that right?
Yeah, about a year and a half. I think we got our license in November of 2022.
Okay.
Yep.
Local apples, bought apples, both?
All local apples.
Okay.
We work with an orchard. It's about 40 minutes outside of Punxsutawney. We get a lot of juice from him of just his apples, of established apple trees.
Uh-huh.
We have an orchard planted. It's just not fully, production yet. And we also just wild harvest quite a few apples as well. So.
And not just that, I think I had a Perry from you last night?
Yep. So we did a single tree Perry. It's just an old pear tree. There's quite a few of them, but this one, I don't know, makes good Perry. So
okay.
It's all from one tree. It's just a giant old pear tree. Nobody knows what it is, and it's just, we've made Perry out of it for...
And I got to say, that is one of the things that intrigues me most about cider making. Mm-hmm. Just that whole, finding the wild leftovers.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where we are in Punxsutawney. There's just tons of wild apples, and not one tastes the same. So it's really cool to make cider out of that.
Yeah.
It's definitely...
Yeah, it's like an automatic blend.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. It's pretty cool and unique.
But on the other hand, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to work with it sometimes, just... with acidity levels and all that kind of stuff. We do have to adjust that every now and then just for, like you said, we don't know what we're getting.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, I assume the stuff you're buying in, that makes your, I don't want to say bulk products, but your bigger products.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Our mass-produced products, that all comes from mostly the orchard that we work with.
Okay. And what kind of ciders are those?
They're semi-sweet, semi-dries. We have a couple, our number one sellers, a pear ginger apple cider.
Okay.
And then we also have one that we call the Volunteer. That's a cranberry cherry. So there's some of the flavored stuff, just lower on the sugar levels than a lot of the mass-produced stuff. But still have to have some sugar in there.
Yeah,
so.
you got to have something for the folks.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and I know you're canning. Do you do anything in bottles as well?
We just bottle. We had cans last night for the cider maker dinner.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's just a one-off thing that we do with some weird, like random stuff. But we do bottles, 500 milliliter bottles.
Okay.
And that's how we sell most. And kegs, we sell kegs to a lot of different breweries and bars and
nice.
All the local spots. So,
yeah. Where can people find your cider?
Well, in Punxsutawney, we sell bottles at a couple different pizza shops around town, and then at 2 of the local bars in our hometown of Punxsy.
What are those? Because I'm going to be
Borough.
going there at some point.
Okay.
I'd like to know. Yeah.
The Borough Bar, it's the main bar downtown on Main Street. Sandfly Brewing Company, that's the local brewery.
Nice.
And then Punxsy Pizza has us on tap and sells bottles.
Very nice.
And then Alaska's Pizza has us just in bottle form right now. But then we sell to a few other breweries in the area, like Clarion River Brewing Company in Clarion, PA, Boxcar Brewing Company in DuBois, the Toasted Monkey over in
Hyde.
Yep, in
yeah,
Hyde.
I know that place.
Yep, we're on tap there now, too.
I'll be damned.
Yep.
Sorry, I have their T-shirt.
Oh, yeah. It's a cool little bar.
It is a cool little bar. I was very surprised.
Cool. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome.
Excellent.
So, and we're just trying to expand that side of it to just get more people to drink the cider. That's what we want. That's our end goal. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Nice to meet you too.
Brother Monk is out in Indiana County, and they do make a quince cider. Dan and Joe Hollaback run it, and they were both there. Kind of a funny pair. Give them a listen. Hey, I'm with Dan and Joe Hollaback from Brother Monk Cider Works in North Cambria? Northern Cambria, Pennsylvania. Hi. How are you doing?
Good.
We're at the PA Cider Fest. You guys have brought your stuff. I've had your stuff a couple of times. I think I may have actually talked about it on a really early episode of the podcast, a bottle I got at the farm show. But you've got you have an array of stuff. What are you known for?
Cider, I hope. Hopefully quality cider.
Okay.
But yeah, so we do. We try to do a wide range of things.
I think I had a quince cider from you.
We have a quince, we have a pear, we have some that are made with the more heirloom traditional apples, and then we make, another batch that are mainly from culinary, your sweet apples.
Culinary apples being the apples people are familiar with from the store.
The stuff you'd pick up at the store.
Yeah. Okay. And you do cans and bottles.
Yep.
And where would people find your cider?
We're very small, so you can get us, though. We do participate with PA Libation, so we're at the Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia, and then also their store in Shadyside in Pittsburgh. So,
and are you doing any outreach are you at any other producers, any small breweries, wineries?
Well, we have a couple. We have a couple breweries that are carrying our stuff in Johnstown. We have Stonebridge.
Stonebridge. Yeah.
And I know recently Evil Genius over in Philadelphia picked up some of our stuff, and they've been selling some, so that's very nice.
Just a couple blocks from where my son lives.
That's
good. Nice. So, what are you hoping to get out of today, the Cider Fest?
I think it's really this is an opportunity to, one, get our brand out, and two, just educate people about cider and what cider is and how it can vary and what it can be, and just what kind of different things you can do with an apple, and how educate people about the versatility of the apple and all of the different things it can do.
Yeah. I know I'm here for education because I know beer, I know whiskey. I don't know anywhere near as much as I'd like to about cider. So
that's the thing, as Joe said, when you do a tasting and you can really point out how the cider brings out various flavors. So come by when everything's cooled down.
Yeah. Try some of that and pick some stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Deep Roots Cider is up in Sugar Run, northwest of Scranton along Route 6. They do a still cider, more like an apple wine, and it's at 10%. I had their dry spy cider because I really like Northern Spy apples. It's a good apple for switch hitting, eating, and cider making. I talked to Oliver Young, and this interview has some pretty heavy wind noise. I did the best I could. Hey, I'm at the PA Cider Fest with Oliver Young of Deep Roots. You're in, come again? Sorry. Sugar Run,
We're in
Pennsylvania.
Sugar Run, Pennsylvania. Not well known, but it's up in northeastern Pennsylvania, up northwest of Scranton and Bradford County. We're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, yes.
Basically.
It's up that place where there's no roads. That's
Right.
Yeah.
Up off Route 6.
Okay. You just sampled me on your dry spy cider. You do still ciders?
Yes, we do a wine-style cider. We don't infuse any carbon dioxide. It is at 10% alcohol by volume, so it's basically wine made from apples. The dry spy that you tried is a combination of Northern Spy and Spy Gold apples. As you may have tasted, a nicely rounded cider with a dry finish. Comes off kind of akin to a white wine, only with apple notes to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have to say, for as dry as it is, you still retain a lot of apple flavor.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the trick that, and the uniqueness of our product is that in our dries we have a full fruit flavor, and they tend to finish dry, which is a neat flavor profile that we carry in our dry ciders.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do people find your cider?
We are located in Sugar Run, Pennsylvania, at our tasting room, 348 Back Road, Sugar Run. We are also retailing.
Wait, it's literally called Back Road?
And we're on Back Road.
Wow. Okay.
It's a dirt road. It's called Back Road.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Sorry.
I don't know who made it up,
No.
but he must have had a sense of humor.
It has twigged my funny bone, I will tell you that.
And we retail at several Weiss supermarkets in the Scranton and Wilkes-Barre area, out in State College, Bloomsburg, and we are also in Lewisburg.
And deeprootshardcider.com, that information's there?
Yes.
Okay.
We're also at some Garrity stores, and we retail also at some convenience stores such as Pump and Pantry and the Dandy Marts. That are
Okay. Yeah.
So we retail in several areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Oliver. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for talking to me.
Sure. Have a good fest.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. I didn't get an interview with Maria Kretschmann of After the Fall Cidery, the one-woman operation she has in Rochester, Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh. It's kind of embarrassing to admit this, but I was tongue-tied and struck by fanboy anxiety. I really like Maria's cider. So does almost everyone. The tannins are amazing. Maybe next year I'll have the courage to talk to her. I hope so. Meanwhile, Arsenal Cider has been around for 14 years, coming out of Pittsburgh. That makes them one of the oldest, or maybe the oldest surviving cider maker in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure. They were the guys who had the celery cider, and we talked about that. Really. Have a listen. Hey, I'm at the PA Cider Fest with Jody O'Donnell. He's a retail manager for Arsenal Cider House in Pittsburgh. How you doing?
Good. How are you, my friend?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Gorgeous day, right?
Sure is.
Yeah. So I had your your celery cider last night. Yeah. That was, I'm not really a cider or celery fan, but that was surprisingly tasty. How did that work?
It's such a weird, cool flavor. It just kind of worked. I mean, it's mostly apple, so it's an apple base with celery seed.
Okay.
And it just magically blended together into this really, really cool flavor.
I mean, I hate it when people ask me where I get ideas for stuff, but where do you get it?
Yeah.
Feel like that?
Well, that's the owner.
Okay.
Yeah, Bill Larkin is the owner. He I don't know if he dreams this stuff up and it just makes it work.
Yeah. People were saying, you got to try the celery thing. I'm like, what are you talking about? And there it was.
That's amazing.
But you brought other stuff as well. What's your main cider?
We have 5 go-tos, 5 staples that we always make. We have a bone dry. It's very close to a brut style champagne. We have one that's called the Fighting Ellick. It's just off dry, right in the middle of the road, not too dry, not too sweet.
Okay.
We have a semi-sweet apple called the Archibald To Do. It's your most traditional style of hard cider. If you're looking for a crowd pleaser, everybody likes that one. And we have a mead honey wine made with orange blossom honey.
All right. Okay. And mostly canning and draft?
Mostly canning and draft. We also do 750 milliliter bottles as well.
And where do people find it?
ArsenalCider.com. We ship through our website. We also have 3 locations in Pittsburgh. We're Lawrenceville, Wexford, and Dormont.
Okay. And we mentioned, kind of remembered this. You've been around for a while.
Yeah, 14 years altogether now.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be one of the older cider makers in Pennsylvania.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. What has experience taught you?
Boy, just keep on keeping on, you know?
Okay.
I wish I had some more insight on that, but that's all you can do. Just keep on plugging away, trying out different stuff like celery ciders. And yeah.
So I've been following the booze market for about 30 years now. Cider it just always seems like cider's about to have a moment, and then something happens. Like, are we in another one of those, maybe this is the moment things?
I think this is maybe the moment, It's starting to be much more prevalent. Even, a lot of the beer fests and everything that are typically focused just on beer, you're seeing a lot of cideries pop up in that
okay.
too.
I mean, I remember I always used to say, yeah, keep telling me about cold coffee. That's everybody says that's going to happen. It's never that happened.
It happened. Yeah.
So cider could happen.
It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cool event.
It's a very cool event. We love being here.
Yeah. Well, all right, Jetty, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Appreciate it. The last Cider Fest interview I did was with an old buddy from the beer business, Ben Kishbaugh. Ben and his partner Troy Lehman opened Big Hill Cider Works in Gardner's between Carlisle and Gettysburg. We didn't talk about this cider, but he gave me a sample of their Manchurian cider made from Manchurian crab apples. Wow. Barrel-aged for a year and Barrel-aged for a year and displaying a great balance of sharpness and bitterness. It was one of the best ciders I had that day. Here's what we did talk about. Okay, I'm at the table for Big Hill Cider Works. They're in Gardner's, PA, and I'm talking to Ben Kishbaugh. How you doing?
Great, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm bugging Ben while he's setting up here, but
never a bug. We're still setting up. So.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Big Hill ever since I tried some actually it's Sterling Pig. How did you wind up there?
So I used to actually live in media.
Oh, okay.
I lived right above Bevan's Candy, and I worked part-time at Pinocchio's.
Oh, yeah.
Which was one of my forays into
good booze.
Alcohol, good booze.
Yeah.
And then became friends with Luik, the owner, and Brian, the brewer, Brian McConnell and Luik.
Yep.
And, they've just become great industry friends, and it's fun.
No, that's cool. I always bitch and moan about Pennsylvania booze laws, but that's one that worked out pretty well.
That's one that I think worked out very well.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled with that, and we've built a lot of those good relationships over. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, so over
nice.
10 years we've been making cider, and
I didn't realize it was that long.
Kind of crazy to think that, right?
Yeah. So what? I don't know. I don't want to say philosophy, but what kind of cider do you make?
We do a little bit of everything. We do some modern ciders that are sweetened back with fresh apple juice. Never any sugar added. Never any adjuncts, any sweeteners, anything like that.
Just juice.
Just juice.
Okay.
We do dry single varietals. I should have backed up there. All of our fruit is grown on our orchards.
Okay, that's
so
important.
We do modern ciders. We do single varietals. Kingston Black, Golden Russet, Newtown Wixon, Stoke Red. We do some sour ciders, like Creek, which is wild fermented sour cherries, and wild fermented apples. We do some specialty ciders. We do a Kamado. We do an ice cider. We're kind of all over the board.
Okay.
So yeah, we do it all.
I have to say, I'm blown away because it's the second time that I've heard Kamado since I got here, and I'm just like, we need to do more of that because I really, really like Kamado.
Yes.
So, where can people get your cider?
All throughout central Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Anywhere from, that's the easy, quick version.
Sure.
Anywhere from State College to Chambersburg to Philadelphia, everywhere in between.
That's good.
We do have a cider locator on our website. Is the best place to take a look at where you can buy from, like a distributor, bars and restaurants, local breweries.
Stores.
Obviously, our tap house. We have a tap house that's open weekends.
And where is Gardner's from York?
Gardner's from York is due west on 234. So we're halfway between Carlisle and Gettysburg.
Okay.
We have almost a full acre and a half outdoor lawn area, patio area. We do live music, trivia every weekend, food trucks, rotating different food trucks. So it's all kinds of good time. Family friendly, dog friendly. That's the best place to get all of our ciders under one roof.
Okay.
Everywhere else is subject to availability.
Whatever's there.
But
yeah. Okay, cool. I'll let you go.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that's all. That's all we need.
Perfect. Hopefully we can catch up here again soon.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds like I got to come down and visit.
Come out and check out the tap house. Bring your dogs, bring your family, bring your friends.
Okay.
We're all having a good time today. So.
Cool. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
After I got home, which, by the way, such a beautiful drive home over the ridges and along the creeks. I hadn't really driven through this part of PA much before the last 3 years, and it's really a pleasure. Anyway, I realized I needed to wrap this up, and my go-to guy for knowing what's going on with the greater, wider PA cider business is Ben Wenk at Ploughman Farm Cider in Gettysburg. So we did a Zoom interview the following week while he was doing some business in Philadelphia. We talked about the difference in the PA Cider Fest from 5 years ago and in the industry, and a lot about how cider needs to bring its story to the people, like I'm doing here. Let's see what he had to say. Hey, I'm talking again to Ben Wenk from Ploughman Cider down in Gettysburg. How you doing?
Doing real well. Good to speak with you again. And
so I wanted to talk to you about Cider Fest. I went, you hosted me, and I appreciate that. I got to talk to a bunch of cider makers at the event. I wanted to talk to you more about things overall, about the fest and about Pennsylvania cider. What was this event a success, 2024?
Yes, absolutely. It was one of those things where, it was so the kind of the history of the event. It was held in 2017 through 2019, organized by the founders. Mary Bigham and her partner Rich have done a great job and really put our state as a cider state on the map through this great event that was everyone's favorite event on the calendar. And then obviously a couple years of COVID, kind of an attempted revival that occurred in 2022. And now this year, been fortunate to do some events with Meredith of Homebrewed Events, and her and I got to talking the one day, and we realized I hadn't understood that she had actually been there as an attendee in the past. And, we both agreed it's one of the best events that we had ever attended on the attendee or producer side, and that it needed to come back. Well, like it had to happen. And so I've never been involved in anything quite that scale, but certainly that's where Meredith's expertise came along. And
she knows what she's doing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Organization on a level that I can't compete with, certainly. So that's a big part of its success. Absolutely. If not the biggest part of its success, but really, I'd say the best part about the festival was really the people, the attendees. We had all in just about 1,000 people that were there, and we didn't have any problem guests. We had beautiful weather. We had just the vibes were off the charts. It was a lot of fun from cider makers dinner the whole way through to the end. So yes, we're very proud of what we accomplished this year. We've got lots of plans to make it better for next year, of course, anytime you do something the first time, but we're really pleased with it.
Talking about those early ones, I was at the 2019 Cider Fest. What I recall seemed quite different from this one. I remember a lot more of the sweet, fizzy, almost soda ciders, and I honestly remember the serious ciders, the artisanal, traditional, whatever you want to call them, as being dry, but with not that much flavor. This year, I thought there was a lot more traditional ciders, and they had a ton of flavor. Is this well, first off, is this just my memory, or is this the result of better cider making, or is it the fruit from more cider apples coming available as trees mature that have been planted?
Well, I'd say that it's I think the simple and most accurate answer to that would be that it's all of these things. I think that and I think a missing part, or maybe an underappreciated part of that, is the development of the market. Because it's one thing for us to make the ciders that we like to drink. It's a whole nother thing to sell them, right? And I think that the quality of the cider that you're experiencing and the change in the years in between, I think, is all the things you discuss. I think it's better apples coming online from our orchards, more varieties that are more appropriate for cider making, we'll say. And it is, the makers themselves improving their tactics, getting that feedback from the marketplace. But also, I think that today's consumers, and I actually heard this from several producers when I was going around at the end and getting everyone's kind of, first blush reaction, consumers are, they've matured and improved in the same way that these ciders have. That it would have been common for us to do a big event like that, especially when you go back to 2016, 17, 18. We're starting to see the turn of the tide around 19, but it was very common. Oh, what's your sweetest? What's your highest ABV? And let me tell you, that's not what I got into this business to do. So, but today's cider drinkers are more likely to, in almost a sheepish kind of way, do you have anything that's a little bit dry? And we're like, oh, I've been waiting for someone to say this for a long time. And so we've been able to, adjust the kinds of things that we're producing as a cider making state to match the demographics and the preferences of the consumers. And I think these two things are co-evolving and evolving, if that makes sense, like at the same time. And it's a really cool synchronicity to witness. And it certainly felt like it was on display on Cider Fest Saturday, for sure.
Yeah, it was quite different, I thought. And again, though, I was very impressed, and I've already talked about that in the podcast, by the Inner Stoic single tree crab apple. I think you and I both tasted that Friday night. And I took a bottle home and shared it with some friends, and they were kind of shocked by it. I think it was the first time they'd really tried something like that. And it took a while, and it didn't reach everybody, and that's okay. I mean, in that nothing is supposed to really reach everybody, but there's clearly some education that needs to be done. How do we do that?
Oh boy, that's the $10,000 question. I'll begin to answer that with a little bit of an anecdote. One of the first Philly cider weeks that we had here in Philadelphia, it's changed hands now, but at the time was Tria Taproom, was able to get the folks. They had a great event with, I forget the gentleman's name, but he was the next generation of the DuPont family of cider makers from the Normandy region of France that make the Etienne, DuPont, and they've been making cider there in the same way for, I think it's like 14, 15 generations.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to be invited to come a little early to meet him and kind of share a cider with him and talk to him. And one of the first things I asked him was, somebody who had been making cider in the same region of France for his family for 1,000 years, like, what is it that you're trying to do to increase like consumption in France? And the first thing he said was education.
Oh my God!
Oh no!
It'll never end.
Right. I thought that maybe that this new flush of cider makers, that we would set the grounds that our generation would establish something that the next generation to make cider in Pennsylvania could benefit from. And then to hear him talk about that, he kind of realized, sure, we'll be the first generation, and maybe 17, 18 generations down the road, we'll get the education thing accomplished. But honestly, I think the answer is it takes events like the PA Cider Fest, where consumers have the ability to interface with the actual producers and ask them questions. And I draw a lot of the inspiration and sample. That's obviously that's a huge part of it, because you can run your mouth and speak eloquently about these things, but until you get that liquid to lips, as they say, and you can kind of explain things as they're being tasted, that's the real important thing. And I was very fortunate to attend Franklin County Cider Days in Western Massachusetts way back. I think it was like maybe 2019, 2018. And I really saw a vision in that community, which had been holding this cider salon for, at the time, 24 consecutive years. It was the longest running cider tasting in the world before COVID shut it down. Like, when I would go up there and pour, I believe we might have been the first Pennsylvania cidery to pour at that cider salon. And I was just blown away by the people in that community were asking all the same questions of me as a producer that I would be asking if I was on the other side of the table. They were so incredibly passionate and educated and cider literate in Western Massachusetts. And I just thought to myself, well, my county and Adams County probably grows, 8 to 10 times more apples by volume, and we don't have these kind of passionate cider people in Adams County. how can I change that? How can I make this and not just for Adams County, but for all of Pennsylvania? How can we make this our native drink? Because we do live in a place that grows great apples. And so that, I think,
I have to say, I was kind of impressed by the regional variety that I saw at Cider Fest. There were places from the Poconos. There were places there was a place from Punxsutawney. There were places down I think in Somerset County. They were all over the state.
For sure. And I can definitely be accused of being a little bit Adams County partial, Adams County bias.
Well, you ought to be.
We've moved all of a half a mile in 200 years of my family, so I guess you could say I'm kind of stuck here. But truthfully, there's great apples and grown, and there's great cider made all across our Commonwealth. There really is, and I'm sure you got to experience that as you were making your way through the festival grounds and trying different ciders. That there's very few corners of the state of Pennsylvania that cider does not touch, that cider is not being made. And it's an event like what we were able to, with the help of all the people, we had such a great team of workers and volunteers to get us through the setup and the execution. And, really it takes that kind of a heavy lift to really have an event that moves the needle and starts doing this education and gets people to discover cider or think about it in ways that they maybe hadn't before.
Yeah. I think that last part is very well taken.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, I just don't know that people are going to have those experiences if they're just going to their local Applebee's or Olive Garden and getting a draft of Angry Orchard. I don't think there's a bridge from that style of cider to, the style of cider that we're seeing this, kind of revival and renewed interest. I really think that it's going to take these folks going out and finding their local producer, visiting their tap room, becoming acquainted with the kinds of ciders that they offer, then using that to branch out and kind of look for cider more regionally across the state. So, and again, that's one of the reasons that me and Meredith were both just certain. And again, with the grace and permission and encouragement of Mary and Rich, put this thing on. It just absolutely needed to happen. So, we're glad it did.
I really did like seeing there were several cider makers who had only been in the business for less than 2 years, and yet, produced some really good drinks.
Yeah, I got you.
Maybe down to sharing of information, I have to think.
Yeah, I think that's a big. I also would probably want to. I don't have any information on who might have pursued these. Certainly, since 2019, the Cider Institute of North America formed out of a program that Joel from the UK used to come over to the United States, do cider making education, and me and our cider maker Edwin were fortunate enough to course way back in I think it was probably 2015. So from that practices and principles course has emerged the Cider Institute of North America. They do a great job of preparing American cider makers to take their hobby and put it into practice as a commercial venture and get all the science behind it. So, we're going for sure who in Pennsylvania may or may not have taken that course. I can tell you certainly that there's much better opportunities for education around cider making now than maybe just 5 years ago.
That's great. It would seem in all aspects, in education, in apple supply, in, as you mentioned, the sophistication of the market improving. Yeah, it's a much better time.
Yeah, and certainly I would say that our Pennsylvania Cider Guild has had a role to play in the development of all these things. We've been active in trying to get some of Pennsylvania's laws and legislature around cider to be improved and a little bit more open and a little bit more, less restrictive in terms of how cider is made and labeled and sold in Pennsylvania, but also wanted to give credit to ACA, the American Cider Association, and all the work that they've done doing the same kind of work on a national scale, doing national promotions around dry cider, supporting education, going to Washington to lobby on our behalf in Capitol Hill to help improve, the regulations around cider, which can be unnecessarily restrictive compared to other segments of the beverage industry. So, yeah, all of these things are kind of all pulling the rope in the same direction. And it's one of those things that when you're in the industry, I guess I don't have the advantage of it's hard to assess these changes in real time. Whereas I really appreciate your perspective of, having attended in 2019 and again in 2024. And I really so appreciate hearing your reaction, because, the gradual changes over time when we're in the industry and in the midst of it can be a little bit less obvious, and
Sure.
so to hear that is really encouraging.
I just think that it was enough that it made me come to a realization about how I was appreciating cider. So good thing.
Great. Yeah, for sure. And,
yeah,
I think that I say this fairly often. It's like, there's a cider out there for everybody. And
yeah,
it's just a matter of deciding kind of where your preferences lie. And then, there's a little bit of learning how to discover those kinds of ciders that that you prefer. And I think that, I think our whole industry could do a little bit better job in terms of labeling and preparing consumers when they're in the market and they're out shopping for ciders, and maybe they're at a 6-pack shop or a bottle shop or something, and don't have the producer there to, kind of handhold them through that process. So I think we still got a long way to go. And again, that's why the importance, and it's why we need to keep having these cider fests.
Right.
Like we are. And, but appreciative of how far we've come, acknowledging how far we have yet to go, but there is a cider out there for everybody. And I think it's our industry's job to make it as easy as possible for those consumers to find the ciders that they really appreciate, no matter what kind of cider they are.
All right. That's all I got today. I thank you. Thank you for everything. And especially thank you for your time today. Thanks, Ben.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no problem. It was a pleasure hosting you at Cider Fest, and, you're certainly welcome back next year, and we'll have we've got a couple things we know we're going to work to improve for next year. So we're already excited for 2025. And, we're hoping that we can, get the same weather as we had for this year. Because
wow, yeah, that would be great.
Get out of the park. Yeah, and whenever Mary and Rich had their festivals from 2017 to 2019, it was always perfect weather. So I felt like
I do remember a great day. Yeah.
So yep.
All right.
That was a great day, and thanks for being a part of it.
All of this really gave me a lot to think about, and it links into the PA wine business, the PA spirits business, and even the PA craft beer industry. I'm still working on integrating this, and we'll see what comes of it. For me, for the show, and for you. Cheers. Oh no, we're not quite done yet. Like I said, I did finally get my grill back. It's a Kamado Joe, the big red egg, if you will, one of the big ceramic cookers. I got mine 2 years ago, but what with the house remodel situation and all, I've only been able to cook on it maybe 5 times. Completely frustrating. Now, as of 3 days ago, we finally have a grilling space right by the back door. And our contractor surprised me by hauling the Kamado down from the garage. It's not easy. All up, the thing weighs just shy of 250 pounds, and it's somewhat fragile. So thanks again, Matt. Appreciate it. I got a pair of pork tenderloins and put them in a honey Dijon marinade for a few hours. I shook down the old charcoal that was in the fire basket and cleaned out the ash and added fresh charcoal. I use Humphrey's lump hardwood charcoal from Brookville, Pennsylvania. I'm actually going to be visiting Brookville next week, doing research for an episode coming up soon. So I tucked 2 starter cubes in the charcoal and lit them. Look, I won't bore you. This part took almost an hour. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, to be honest. But I've been advised not to use a chimney starter because of the possibility of thermal shock to the ceramic from dumping hot coals on it. I'll have to work on my technique. There are 2 things to remember when getting a Kamado cooker to temperature. First, airflow is crucial. So there's a vent at the bottom and another at the top, and that's how you control the temperature. Too much air, and your temperature will soar. Too little, and you'll never get hot enough. I opened both vents wide to get the coals going, and then when the temperature got to 400, about 50 degrees under where I wanted to be, I knocked both of them back to about half. Once the coals were going, and the temperature had stabilized at 450 degrees, I shoved all the coals to one side, and I put the actual grill in with the deflector plates out. These are ceramic plates that they put in to keep the strongest heat from the coals away from your meat. That's more for slow cooking. So I put the grill in its lowest position, really down close to the coals. I put the 2 tenderloins on the grill over the coals and let them go for 7 minutes. They seared up nicely. And I flipped them and closed the lid. Closing the lid gives you heat from the top side for the meat as well, and helps cook the loins through. After 10 minutes, I flipped them on their sides, closed the lid again, and set the timer for another 4 minutes. And I'll be honest, this made me nervous. I couldn't see the meat, and I wasn't sure how it was going. Was it burning? Was it doing nothing? I worry too much. The timer went off, and I opened the grill. They weren't on fire. I checked the temperature, and the smaller loin was about 10 degrees over target, and I got it right off of there. The larger one was about 10 degrees under, so I let it go with the lid open for another 2 minutes, and we were good. I let them both rest for another 10 minutes, closed up the top and bottom vents on the Kamado to kill the fire. After the rest, I cut the loins across the grain in medallions. The smaller loin was a little bit dry, but the big one was perfect, cooked through, but tender and juicy. Kathy had made Chinese noodles with rainbow chard we'd gotten in our CSA box, and a slaw with snow peas, apples, carrots, and for God's sake, kohlrabi. I'm still not a kohlrabi fan, but the rest of it was pretty good. 2 hours later, the Kamado was still at 200 degrees, but it was cool by the time I was ready for bed. Good to have you back, Joe. Now I want to smoke something. A quick follow-up on my basement bar draft situation. As I mentioned last episode, I went ahead and ordered a purpose-built kegerator. Lowe's offers a stripped-down model without the taps, tower, tank, or regulator, which was perfect for me. I already had all that. It would fit either 2 sixtel kegs, and that's the popular 1/6 barrel kegs that are also called beer logs. They hold just about 5 gallons. Or a sixtel and 2 of the 8-liter PET plastic kegs I got for making seltzer. Our good friend Rich Gallup, who's a HVAC, plumber, electrician, contractor, came over and we got it leveled and locked into place in the mechanical room behind the bar. Rich drilled some pieces of leftover oak flooring into the concrete and also into a beam from when the house was originally built in the early 1800s. It was an oak beam so thick that it probably sprouted back before 1776. And here we were, casually drilling an anchor screw in it to hold down a beer fridge. I got a sixtel of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale to test it. Yes, I know I said there would only be Pennsylvania beer in the bar. I also know that I made the rule, so it's mine to break. Then Rich and Dave Drees, who you've already met a few times, fed the gas and beverage lines into the kegerator. To do so, they had to disconnect the couplings to fit them through the pre-drilled holes. Everything got hooked up again, and we had some celebratory beers. Except that next morning, I checked everything, and the gauges on the regulator all read 0. The tank was empty. There was no pressure in the lines. Had we not put a fitting back together correctly? I disconnected the couplers and left it. We had to leave for a family gathering in upstate New York. So yesterday, my friend Tim Roberts, who brewed for years at Yards Brewing Company, was in the area and stopped by for a drink. I told him about the gas leak, and he took a look. We hooked up the backup CO2 tank and immediately heard gas leaking from the seltzer keg. The coupler was wobbly, and unless it's sitting just so, leaked. So I set it just so, and the pressure has been holding steady. Problem kinda solved. I'm waiting till tonight to see if the beer has recarbonated successfully. Assuming it did, we're going to have to drink through that sixtel to make room for the 4th of July keg I have coming. Always something. That's the show. Thanks to a lot of people for interviews. Ben Wank, Aaron Rush, Ben Kishbaugh, Oliver Young, Jody O'Donnell, Dan and Joe Hollebeck, Paul Tofani and John Kulig, Andrew Divelbus. Thank you all for taking the time to talk to me. As always, you can see episode-related pictures on Instagram at Stag Podcast and on Facebook at Seen Through a Glass. If you're listening to this show on the radio at WSOV, there are over 40 more episodes to enjoy, including a Milheim episode and a Nittany Valley episode, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or like I listen, directly on the Podbean app. If you'd like to toss a bit in my hat to keep the show going, because believe me, the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau sponsorship is nice, but it doesn't pay all the bills, I have a coffee button in my Instagram link tree. That's at Stag Podcast, and at the Facebook page. Coffee, it's KO-FI, is an easy way to drop me a few bucks online to help keep this going. And if you've already donated, thank you. We've all heard the story of John Chapman, Johnny Appleseed, who traveled through the eastern half of America from the 1790s through about 1840, planting apple trees. But what they don't tell you in school is that he wasn't planting apples to make pies or munch for lunch. No, he was planting spitters, the hard and sometimes bitter apples that cider makers use. Johnny Appleseed wanted to help people get their drink on. The next episode is going to be about pairing food and beer. I got an interview with my old friend John Holl, who, among his many accomplishments, has written 2 cookbooks, including a pretty much definitive one about food and craft beer. John's always a great interview, and you'll get to hear that in 2 weeks. Until then, thanks for listening. This is Lou Bryson on Seen Through a Glass from the smack dab center of the Keystone State.